Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with the Spain News Update. And a government has finally been formed in the autonomous community of Castilla y León. And let's just say that the left here in Spain is up in arms. But more about that in just a moment. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. Thanks to people that supported the channel through a donation or by buying me a beer or a coffee. Many thanks for that. Thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your continuing support. Now, let's get into the news. And as I said, a government has finally been formed in the autonomous community of Castilla y León almost a month after elections were held. And the political party Vox enters a government for the first time here in Spain, officially at least. As we can see here, PP and Vox form their first coalition government in Castilla y León and speak of a triumph and a historic day. PP and Vox have reached a legislative agreement in Castilla y León for a stable and solid coalition government and for the Bureau of the Cortes Generales. The leader of Vox in the region, Juan García Gallardo, will be the vice president of an executive in which his party will also hold 3 regional ministries compared to the PP7. Vox will also preside over the regional parliament, and the spokesperson of the government will be the Partido Popular. With this agreement, Santiago Abascal's party achieves the milestone of entering an autonomous government for the first time, something which, however, has been described by the parties of the left and by Ciudadanos as a shame and an ignominy. So Vox entering a government here in Spain for the first time since it was formed some 8 years ago, I believe. And of course, one of the biggest critics of this new coalition government is Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, and he considers the pact with Vox in Castilla y León terrible news for democracy and for the PP. I echo what the European People's Party has already said Pedro Sánchez on his arrival at the Summit of European Leaders in Versailles. Sánchez responded to the question of the government pact announced by the PP and Vox to divide up the Castilla and León government. This is terrible news for Spanish democracy and for the PP. They are going to pay dearly for this decision in political terms because many people are not going to understand why they are opening the door for the first time in our country to a government with the far right. So some harsh words there from Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez saying that this is terrible news for democracy here in Spain, accusing the Partido Popular of opening the door to a government with the far right for the first time in Spain's democracy, and these words coming from a man who formed a coalition government with the far left. So a popular expression that we have in English comes to mind: pot calling the kettle black. And remember, Sánchez is a man who has done deals with some of the most radical political parties in this country. So radical, in fact, they make Vox look like moderates. Now, a piece of news that was mentioned in the chat section on the live stream yesterday is that there is going to be a transport strike starting on Monday. And as we can see here, small hauliers go on strike from Monday and warn of bankruptcy over fuel prices. The unstoppable rise in fuel prices in recent weeks has been the final straw. The Platform for the Defence of the Road Freight Transport sector has called for an indefinite strike from Monday the 14th of March to protest against the economic situation of total bankruptcy which they claim to be going through. We have no choice but to stop because we have no money left to pay for the costs of making a journey, says Manuel Hernandez, the president of this association that brings together self-employed and small and medium-sized transport companies. We are the ones who have the lorries and carry the goods from one place to another, he explains, to differentiate himself from the large companies grouped in the National Road Transport Committee. So small hauliers here in Spain announcing that they are going on strike from Monday. So another problem to add to the list. Now, Madrid Premier Isabel Díaz Ayuso is making headlines again, and this time it's because she's taking 12 contracts worth 326 million euros awarded by Sánchez's government during the pandemic to the Public Prosecutor's Office. The president of the Community of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, announced on Thursday that she had filed a complaint with the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office regarding 12 contracts worth 326 million euros awarded during the pandemic by the coalition government presided over by Pedro Sánchez. She did so in the Assembly of Madrid, the regional representative chamber presided over by her party. The contracts were executed by 7 companies related to Pedro Sánchez, the former Health Minister Salvador Illa, and the Minister for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation, Nadia Calviño. So Ayuso, no doubt trying to take the heat off herself, her government and her family because of another contract scandal that surfaced a couple of weeks ago. So basically the rule here in Spain is, if you accuse me, I'll accuse you. Now, we all know that many countries are trying to become less dependent on Russian oil and gas. Some countries have said that they will no longer buy those products from Russia, But Spain apparently is not one of those, because yesterday the Nikolai Urvantsev with Russian gas from Siberia unloaded in the port of Bilbao and the protests began. The Russian gas tanker Nikolai Urvantsev is completing the unloading of 175,000 cubic meters of liquefied gas at the Bahia Vizcaína gas regasification plant, and in the next few hours will leave the port of Bilbao and return to Siberia. The ship docked last night at one of the jetties of this regasification plant, which converts LNG into gas for consumption and which stores 3 enormous tanks of 150,000 cubic meters. Social groups in Biscay have called for the first protests against this purchase of Russian gas for this afternoon, with the slogan "Gas finances the war." So people not happy and protesting about the fact that Spain is still buying gas from Russia. Now Spain's inflation woes continue, and inflation climbed to 7.6% in February, 2/10 higher than expected, as war in Ukraine fuels further price rises. Prices rose by 7.6% in February in Spain compared to last year, their highest rate since December 1986, according to the National Statistics Institute, which corrected upwards by 2/10 of a percentage point from a fortnight ago. The upturn in inflation, driven by higher fuel, electricity and food prices, leaves the 6.1% rise in January far behind, increases the pressure on consumers' pockets, and threatens to continue to do so. The figure only includes 5 days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which began in the early hours of the 24th of February. Since then, both oil and gas prices have risen sharply on international markets as a result of the sanctions against Moscow. So inflation up by 6.1% in January, 7.6% in February. Don't know about you, but I'm scared to see what it's going to be in March. And one of the places we are being hardest hit is at the fuel bowser. And petrol prices in Spain have hit an all-time high for the 6th week in a row. The price of fuel in Spain is not letting up in the midst of the escalation of crude oil and refined products on international markets as a result of the war in Ukraine. This week, 95-octane petrol has already reached an average price, including taxes, of €1.68 per litre at Spanish pumps, and diesel is close behind, with an average price of €1.58 per litre, according to data from the latest European Union oil bulletin published on Thursday. In both cases, this is the highest price since records have been kept, which is the equivalent to saying that it is the most expensive in history, since the bulletin has been following the Spanish market since 2005. So fuel prices here in Spain hitting an all-time high. Time to dust off the bike, I think. Now let's have a look at a summary of the health situation here in Spain. We can see the accumulated incidence rate now down to 429. Hospital pressure remains low at 3.9%, and ICU pressure also remains low at 8%. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from previous videos. One here from Johnny: I live in the Nerja area. We had so many wildfires this year, it's scary, and almost all the avocado and many other trees are dead or dying around me. We need rain very badly. Yeah, Johnny, thanks for the comment, and you're right, that part of Spain and many other parts of the country need rain very badly. Today it's raining in Madrid, and there's also rain forecast for the beginning of next week, but I don't think it'll be enough considering how low the dams are. So let's hope the skies open up in the Malaga region and you guys get some well-deserved rain. One here from Shielders: Ola Stewart, what do you think about the booster shot? Do you still think it will be necessary around July 2022 to enter Spain? I hope to hear your advice. Yeah, Shielders, thanks for the comment, and to be honest, I have absolutely no idea whether the requirement for a booster shot will still be in place come June, July this year. I imagine it's all going to depend on the health situation, whether or not it is under control in this country. I would like to think that it will be, but given what I have seen over the last 2 years, I wouldn't put money on it. And another characteristic about that booster shot requirement is that it's an EU requirement and not just the Spanish one. One here from Jose Antonio: pandemic, inflation, war, drought, you forgot the volcano. Next there has to be an alien invasion and then the asteroid. Yeah, Jose Antonio, thanks for the comment, and thanks for reminding me about all those negative things that we have been experiencing lately. Pandemic, inflation, war, drought, and you're right, the volcano. How could I forget about that? But don't worry about the other thing that you mentioned there, the alien invasion, because they've already landed. And if you didn't know already, Jose Antonio, politicians are lizards. Just joking, of course. One here from David: Gracias, Stuart. As always, the fuel prices now are going to be extremely high for petrol, diesel, etc. It's one aspect of the fuel crisis. Some countries will purchase oil from Iran, a country that has already had numerous sanctions against them as a nation. It makes you wonder what's next. Great update, Stuart. Yeah, David, thanks for the comment, and no doubt fuel prices will continue to rise. And you're right, some countries will start to look for other sources so that they can get their hands on this precious resource. The country that you mentioned in your comment, Iran, could be a place that countries turn to. And I also read the other day that the United States is dealing with Venezuela again. So sanction countries one day, valuable sources for oil the next. And finally, one here from Sandy. I'm amazed that you can drive that distance and not encounter a stop sign or traffic signal. Roundabouts in the US are far and few between. Love your updates. Yes, Sandy, thanks for the comment. Roundabouts in the US, few and far between. Here where I live, they are everywhere. In fact, the other day on my drive through this city where I live, I probably went through 20 or 25 roundabouts. They are the traffic control mechanism of choice here in Spain, not only where I live, but in many towns around the country. And when people use roundabouts well, they do serve a purpose and they seem to keep traffic flowing. But when people use them badly, they can be very, very frustrating things indeed, in my opinion, that is. On that note, I'll wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the video out as you normally do. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.